Assalamualaikum Fadil Hazrat. Today we'll be having a walkthrough with regards to how to conduct an analysis from the perspective of a consultant. तो मेरे तजुर्बे में और अंडरस्टैंडिंग में एक कंसल्टेंट का प्राइमरी काम होता है डेटा में काटप कूटी करना, but we tend to avoid using those terms. So what we're going to do is conduct an autopsy so that we can provide a diagnosis by the end of it. So let's begin. So this is the data that we were presented with. It looks pretty straightforward at a first glance, but there are a few problems with this data that you will have to overcome prior to starting to conduct your analysis. So the first problem is इसमें जो different parameters दिए हुए हैं, they've used varied scales for these parameters. So as you can see, ideas से work-life balance तक, they've used a scale of 1 to 5, whereas for overall job satisfaction, they've used a scale of 1 to 10. So these scales are something that you'll have to equal out so that you can have a correlative model, which you cannot do if the scales vary. So that is one problem. The other problem is that for years of experience, the scale varies from about 1 to at a max of about 32. So that is also something that you will have to equate and fit to a scale of 1 to 5 so that you can have a correlative model for your analysis. So this is precisely what we've done in this table. So as you can see, we have equated years to a scale of 1 to 5, and similarly, overall job satisfaction, we've equated to a scale of 1 to 5. Okay, so now that the scales are all similar, we can start off with our analysis, which we've done here. So firstly, we've broken them down into different departments. So as you can see, the administrative department had 3 responses, or rather 3 personnel. Maintenance department had 2 responses. Management had 3. And similarly, these are the distribution for these different departments. We've done this for all respective departments. And then we've taken a consolidated average of all responses in general. This is a graphical representation of the responses on average for different departments for these different parameters. So to elaborate on this, for idea, then later on, we have a graphical representation of these different parameters for all different departments. So for example, the administrative department rated an average of 3.3 score for the IDS parameter, an average of 3.3 score for communication, an average of 2.3 for recognition. And similarly, these are all weighed against the overall consolidated average, which you can see at the end of each parameter in dark blue. This data shows us the different trends that these different respective departments follow. So you can tell that on average, the maintenance department rates each parameter significantly higher than all other departments conclusively. So we've done this analysis on the basis of different departments, but that wasn't enough. So now we move on to years of service, because we figured that years of service is another factor that we have to take into account when trying to establish satisfaction levels at a workplace. For this, we've broken this down into different categories from years 1 to 3, years 4 to 6, years 7 to 10, years 11 to 15, years 16 to 20, and years 20 plus. One point you might raise is that these brackets of years are not similar, where some vary from about 3 years to other in 4, others in 5, and some even for 10. We have purposely done so because we have not taken years as a quantifiable measure, but rather as a percentage of overall journey with the company. For example, if a person goes from 2 years to 3 years of service for this particular company, that's a 50% increase in their overall years of experience. But rather, if a person goes from 20 years to 21 years, that's a mere 5% jump. So in order to equate that difference in experience, we've used these varied scales. And now you can see the different bracket averages of these individuals and their respective responses. So for 4 to 6 years, the average response for ideas is 2.7, communication is 3.7, recognition 2.0. Further on. Similarly, we've made a graphical representation of this as well. This helps us identify trends in between the different age brackets of individuals. So as you can see in both of these dissections and parameters, the overall job satisfaction that the people have rated follows the exact same trend that people have rated their value towards recognition. So this can help us conclude that one of the key driving factors towards being more satisfied with one's job environment is recognition. This is conclusion number one. Secondly, we wanted to illustrate through a normal distribution curve where the general years of experience lies for this particular employee base. As you can see, the employee base is quite bottom heavy, which can be explained through a variety of different reasons, one of which being that the company has recently scaled up its operations, and so most of the people that are currently working in this company have been very recently hired. Another reason for this bottom heaviness can be that this company is considered a stepping stone for people in their corporate endeavors. This can be backed up by high employee turnover rates. Okay, so we had broken these down into different parameters, both for departments as well as for years of service. But now we're taking each individual parameter solely on its own and comparing that to overall job satisfaction. So here we can see job satisfaction compared to each individual parameter on the basis of a trend of responses. So this concludes our analysis, but to conduct further analysis, we would require additional data. An example of which can be additional questions, both in different phrases as well as different hierarchies, in order to conduct a more thorough and 360 evaluation of the sentiment of the employee force. Additionally, I request that for further surveys not to use questions where the individual in itself is being addressed or anybody from a higher level of authority. For example, the question for recognition states, my supervisor recognizes a job well done. So this is a question that is slightly loaded in terms of its responses. And as a consultant, we would hope to ask questions that would negate any opportunity to invoke the Hawthorne effect. Similarly, with questions that address the individual, such as I am able to express ideas, or I have good communication, or I have a good balance. So these are questions that invoke a self-serving bias and rather invoke the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is also, as a consultant, something that we hope to avoid.